Beautiful stone houses lined the upscale neighborhood of Brookline in Boston. Among them, the Victorian mansion at 23 Maple Street was particularly eye-catching. Emily Collins stood by the window, looking at the snow in the garden while resting her hand on her belly. She was 8 months pregnant. "Mom, can you help me put together the crib?" Sophia's voice rang out from the living room. Emily smiled, turned around, and saw her 17-year-old daughter hard at work. Sophia's long chestnut hair was carelessly pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore old jeans and an oversized sweater. "Of course, but don't let me lift anything heavy," Emily said as she slowly sat down on the sofa. "Thank you for looking after both me and the baby." Sophia smiled at her mother. Her blue eyes were just like Emily's. "Of course I have to. I'm going to be taking care of my little brother." "It might be a girl," Emily said with a laugh. "Whoever this child turns out to be, you'll be a wonderful big sister." Just as Sophia was about to answer, they heard the front door open. "I'm home." Richard's strong voice echoed through the house. He was dressed in a gray suit and held a briefcase in one hand. As an executive at an investment firm, he was always busy with work. "Dad." Sophia ran up and hugged her stepfather. Though they weren't related by blood, their bond was deep. Richard had been a good father to Sophia since he married Emily 7 years ago. Richard patted Sophia's head, then approached Emily and kissed her on the forehead. "How are you feeling today?" "I'm fine." Emily took her husband's hand and placed it on her belly. "We'll meet this little one soon." A light of joy shone in Richard's eyes. As an executive at a major investment company, he was known as a successful businessman in the community. Beneath his stern exterior was a kind heart that loved his family above all else. "Jennifer and your parents are coming tomorrow, right?" Emily asked. Richard nodded as he loosened his tie. "Yes, arrangements have been made to pick them up at the airport. I've booked rooms for all 3 of them at the Boston Harbor Hotel." Emily's sister Jennifer was an executive at a marketing company in New York. Though single and devoted to her career, she had taken time off to be present for her sister's second childbirth. Emily's parents, William and Martha, were also coming from their rural home in Maine to celebrate the birth of their grandchild. They were enjoying a quiet country life since retiring. "Sophia, would you like to go shopping with your grandparents tomorrow after school?" "There are a few things we need for the baby," Emily said as she stood up from the sofa and headed toward the kitchen.
Do you know some people earn over $10,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I do it too. Link below if you're curious.
"Sure," Sophia answered, though she seemed a bit reluctant. "But I had plans to meet friends after school tomorrow. I'll have to cancel." Emily put her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Don't push yourself. You have your own life." "No, it's okay," Sophia said with determination. "Family comes first." Richard was looking out the living room window. "It's starting to snow again. I hope tomorrow's flight arrives on schedule." Emily was thinking as she prepared dinner. It had been a while since the whole family was together. She had an uneasy feeling, but decided to attribute it to pregnancy anxiety. That night, the family of 3 enjoyed time together in front of the fireplace. Sophia talked about school, and Richard shared interesting episodes from work. Emily savored this happy moment while feeling the baby move energetically inside her. Before bedtime, Emily lay in bed, gazing at the starry sky through the window. Richard sat next to her and held her hand. "I canceled my Chicago trip next week," he said gently. "I want to be by your side." Emily looked at her husband with gratitude. "Thank you. Having you here makes me feel secure." The next morning, Emily woke up to a sudden pain. Looking at the clock, it was still 5 a.m. She took a deep breath and waited for another pain to come. A few minutes later, it hit her again. "Richard," she woke her sleeping husband. "I think labor has started." Richard was instantly awake and jumped up. How far apart are the contractions? Still far apart. But I think we should call the hospital. Richard acted quickly, contacting the hospital and doing a final check of their bags. Emily went to Sophia's room and gently knocked on the door. "Sophia, wake up," she called softly. "The baby's coming." Sophia opened her eyes sleepily but jumped up as soon as she understood her mother's words. "No. But it's earlier than expected." "Babies have their own schedule," Emily smiled. An hour later, Emily was lying in a hospital bed. Richard, who had just returned from an overseas business trip, stood by her side showing no signs of fatigue. Sophia had decided to skip school and stay with her mother. Morning light streamed through the hospital room window. The whole family was ready to welcome the new life about to be born. Emily held Sophia's hand and smiled. "Are you ready? Ready to welcome a new member of our family?" Sophia nodded. "Yes, I've been waiting for months." Richard gently kissed Emily's forehead. "This will be the best day." Emily engraved this happy moment in her heart as she prepared to welcome a new life. The maternity ward of Boston General Hospital was filled with quiet tension. Snow had begun to fall outside, and early morning light filtered into the room. Emily felt the waves of contractions growing stronger. Sophia held her mother's hand firmly at her bedside, while Richard paced nervously back and forth across the room. "Just a little longer," said Nurse Carol. She checked on Emily with a warm smile. "Your cervix is only 6 centimeters dilated. It will take a bit more time." Emily exhaled deeply. "It hurts more than with Sophia." Sophia wiped her mother's sweaty forehead with a cool towel and said, "Hang in there, Mom. I'm here with you." Richard took Emily's other hand and gently squeezed it. "What can I do? Do you need anything?" Emily smiled faintly. "Just stay by my side." There was a knock at the door, and Emily's sister Jennifer peeked in. "May I come in?" Jennifer appeared stylish in a pantsuit, exuding sophistication. She approached Emily's bed and kissed her sister on the cheek. "The plane arrived earlier than scheduled," she explained. "Mom and Dad are still checking in at the hotel. They'll be here soon." Emily nodded happily. "I'm glad you came." Jennifer smiled at Richard, and he nodded slightly in return. Something seemed to pass between them momentarily, but Emily was too distracted by the next wave of contractions to notice. "Ugh!" Emily grimaced in pain. "Deep breaths," Sophia encouraged her mother. "Rhythmically. Remember the Lamaze method." Richard went to call the doctor, and Jennifer stood on the opposite side of Emily, encouraging her sister. "You can do this. You've always been strong." Several hours passed, and Emily's contractions grew increasingly intense. In the waiting room, her parents William and Martha had arrived and were waiting with tense expressions. In the delivery room, Emily was finally moved to the delivery table. Her hair was stuck to her forehead with sweat, and though she looked tired, there was determination in her eyes. "Almost there," said Dr. Johnson, the obstetrician. "Push hard with the next contraction." Richard stood behind Emily, supporting her. Sophia held her mother's hand, continuing to encourage her. "I can see it," Dr. Johnson announced. "The head is coming. One more push." Emily summoned all her strength for one final push. At that moment, the room was filled with the first cry of a new life. "It's a boy," Dr. Johnson declared with a smile. "A very healthy baby." Emily held her son in her arms, tears streaming down her face. The tiny face, tiny fingers, everything about her newborn son was perfect. "Jacob," she whispered. "Jacob William Collins." Richard was too moved to speak, simply gazing at his wife and newborn. Sophia placed her finger in her brother's tiny hand and said softly, "Hello, Jacob. I'm your sister, Sophia. When the nurse took Jacob away for measurements and cleaning, family members took turns entering the room. William and Martha shed tears at the birth of their grandson, and Jennifer also appeared moved as she took photos. "He's a wonderful child," William patted Richard's shoulder. "Congratulations, son." Martha sat by Emily's bed and held her daughter's hand. "You did well, Emily. You've become such a wonderful mother." That night, after the family had left, Emily was resting in her hospital room. Sophia had insisted on staying with her mother and was sleeping on a cot. Richard had returned home, saying he had an urgent work call. "Mom," Sophia called out softly in the dark hospital room. "Are you happy?" Emily moved her head on the pillow to look at her daughter. "Very. Having you and Jacob, I couldn't ask for more." "Do you love Richard?" There was a hint of anxiety in Sophia's voice. Emily was a bit surprised but answered gently, "Of course." "Why do you ask?" Sophia hesitated for a moment, then said, "Nothing. Just. Dad is kind, isn't he? He cares about us." "Yes," Emily said reassuringly. "Richard is very proud of you." Sophia said nothing more. She crawled under the covers and soon fell asleep. Emily stared at the ceiling, pondering the meaning of her daughter's words. She had always thought the relationship between Sophia and Richard was good, but had she missed something? However, fatigue enveloped her, and she too soon fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, Emily breastfed Jacob when the nurse brought him in. The first feeding was a bit difficult, but with the nurse's help, it went well. Sophia watched with interest. "Amazing," Sophia said in admiration. "Mom, you look so natural." Emily laughed. "It's not natural at all. But you get used to it little by little." In the morning, Richard returned to the hospital room. He brought a fresh bouquet of flowers and kissed Emily on the cheek. "I'm sorry I had to go home last night. It was a work emergency," he explained. "I'll be here all day today." Emily smiled. "It's okay. Sophia kept me company." Richard smiled at Sophia and gently stroked her head. "You're a wonderful daughter. Thank you for helping your mother." Sophia gave a small smile, but there was something unspoken in her eyes. In the afternoon, Emily's parents and Jennifer visited the hospital room again. Martha held Jacob, and William smiled as he looked at his grandson's face. Jennifer was speaking quietly with Richard, but when she saw Emily, she quickly moved away. "What were you talking about?" Emily asked. "Oh, just work talk," Richard answered lightly. "We were discussing the possibility of a joint project with Jennifer's company." "That's right," Jennifer added. "Business talk is boring. More importantly, what's the meaning behind this child's name?" Emily felt something off about the change of subject, but with the fatigue of childbirth, she didn't think deeply about it. "Jacob was my grandfather's name. And William, of course, comes from Dad." William's eyes welled up with tears. "I'm honored, daughter." Later that day, Nurse Carol came to check on Emily's recovery. "Wonderful," she said. "If things continue like this, you can be discharged in 3 days." Emily nodded happily. "I can't wait to go home." Sophia was looking out the window. "The snow has stopped. I have to go to school tomorrow." "That's fine," Emily told her daughter. "You have your own life. School is important." Sophia looked at her mother thoughtfully. "But if something happens?" "Nothing will happen," Emily said reassuringly. "Richard and the nurses are here at the hospital, and your grandparents will probably visit." Sophia didn't seem convinced but nodded. That night, Richard stayed late with Emily and the baby. He held Jacob in his arms and sang quietly. Emily was touched by the sight. "You're going to be a wonderful father," she said gently. Richard showed a contemplative expression briefly, but quickly returned to a smile. That's because you're here. Without you, I couldn't do anything. Sophia, listening to the conversation, seemed like she wanted to say something. However, she remained silent, looking up something on her smartphone. The next day, Emily was resting quietly in her hospital bed. Jacob was in the nursery having tests, and Sophia had gone to school. She was alone in the room. Light streaming through the window hinted at the arrival of spring. Emily was thinking about the joy of receiving a new life and the happiness of her family. Her remarriage with Richard had been peaceful and fulfilling. He had always treasured her and Sophia, and now Jacob had become a member of the family too. She picked up her cell phone and sent Richard a message. "Send me a picture of Jacob. The nurse said he looks like you." There was no immediate reply. Emily thought he was probably in a meeting. She closed her eyes, deciding to rest a bit. The fatigue of childbirth still lingered in her body. The day after tomorrow, she would be discharged and could go home as a new family. With that thought, Emily smiled happily. The morning hospital was filled with busy footsteps and gentle conversations. Outside, the blue sky stretched wide, and sunlight streamed through the windows. With one day left until Emily's scheduled discharge, Sophia had arrived at the hospital early to see her mother and brother before going to school. She got off the elevator and was walking toward the maternity ward where her mother's room was located. At that moment, her eyes caught a brown leather business bag placed in a corner of the lobby. It was a familiar bag, an expensive one with Richard's name on it, which he treasured. "That's strange," Sophia murmured. "Richard said he had an early morning meeting today." She picked up the bag and headed to the reception desk. "Excuse me, it seems someone left this bag," Sophia said to the woman at reception. The receptionist shook her head. "It's been there since this morning, but I haven't seen the owner." "I see. This belongs to my father, so I'll take it to him," Sophia said. "He should be in the maternity ward, but if you see him, could you please tell him I have his bag?" The receptionist nodded with a smile. Sophia started walking down the hallway with the bag. As she headed toward her mother's room, she looked for Richard. However, he was nowhere to be seen. Sophia stopped in front of the hospital room and called out to Nurse Carol. "Good morning, Carol. Is Richard here?" Carol shook her head. "I haven't seen him yet. There haven't been any visitors this morning." Sophia frowned. "But his bag was in the lobby." "That's strange," Carol shrugged. "Maybe he's in the cafeteria on the first floor or somewhere." Sophia nodded and entered her mother's room. Emily was sitting on the bed, breastfeeding Jacob. "Good morning, Mom," Sophia said with a smile. Emily looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Sophia. You came before school." "Yes," Sophia said, placing Richard's bag on the floor. "Richard's bag was in the lobby, but I can't find him anywhere. Do you know anything about it?" Emily tilted her head. "He said he had an early meeting this morning and left. He shouldn't be at the hospital." "But this is definitely his bag," Sophia pointed at the bag. "It even has his name on it." They both looked puzzled. Sophia placed the bag by the bed and checked on her brother. "Good morning, Jacob," she said gently. "It's your big sister." The baby seemed full, and Emily held him to her shoulder, gently patting his back. "Why don't you call Richard?" Emily suggested. Sophia nodded and took out her cell phone. However, after several rings, the call went to voicemail. "He's not answering," she said. "That's weird." Emily put Jacob in the bassinet. "Maybe he forgot it. Richard has seemed busy lately." "But it's not like him to forget something expensive like this," Sophia said. "Should we look inside? Maybe there's an emergency contact or something." Emily hesitated a bit but nodded. "Yes, there might be a clue." Sophia opened the bag and looked inside. There were neatly organized folders of documents, a tablet, and a small black notebook. She took out a folder. It had the logo of Montgomery Investment Company on it. This is from his company. Sophia opened the folder. Inside were multiple documents. As she turned the first page, she suddenly gasped. "What's wrong?" Emily asked worriedly. Sophia didn't answer, quickly flipping through the next page and then the next. The color drained from her face visibly. "Sophia." Emily raised her voice. "What's happened?" With trembling hands, Sophia held the documents and slowly walked over to her mother. Her eyes reflected a mix of fear and anger. "Mom," she said, her voice shaking. "Look at this." Emily took the papers and began reading. They appeared to be legal documents, like a contract between Richard and Jennifer. As Emily's eyes followed the content of the documents, her expression changed. "This is..." She was at a loss for words. "There's more." Sophia held out another document. "This is a document showing Richard's plans to transfer properties and bank accounts in your name after the birth." "Mom, he's trying to steal your assets." Emily continued to look at the documents in disbelief. There, in detail, were horrific plans regarding her, Sophia, and the newborn Jacob's future. Richard and Jennifer had been having an affair for years and had planned to take advantage of Emily's unstable mental state after childbirth to steal her property. Even more shocking, Emily's parents' names also appeared in the documents. They were contracted to receive money in return for their cooperation. "I can't believe it," Emily said in a trembling voice. "How?" A determined look appeared on Sophia's face. "Mom, it's dangerous to stay here. They will surely..." Her words were interrupted by voices from the hallway. It was Richard and Jennifer. They were approaching the hospital room. "Sophia should be at school by now. Emily is probably resting with the baby. Let's proceed as planned." Richard's voice could be heard. "The lawyer is coming this afternoon. Are the documents ready?" Jennifer's voice was also audible. Emily and Sophia stared at each other with terror-filled eyes. Before the two could enter the room, Sophia acted quickly. She took all the incriminating documents from the bag and put them in her own backpack. Then she returned the now empty bag to its original place. "Mom, hurry," she whispered. "Get dressed. We need to leave with Jacob." As if coming to her senses, Emily began to change out of her hospital gown into the clothes Sophia had brought the day before. Sophia wrapped Jacob in a blanket and carefully picked him up. At that moment, there was a knock on the hospital room door. The two froze. "Emily, are you awake?" Richard's voice could be heard. Emily signaled to Sophia with her eyes and answered in a distressed voice, "Yes, but I'm breastfeeding right now. Could you come back in a little while?" "Understood," Richard said. "I'll wait in the cafeteria then. Jennifer is with me." After confirming that the footsteps were moving away, Emily hurriedly began gathering the rest of her belongings. "Where can we go?" she asked in a low voice. "My friend Kate's house," Sophia answered immediately. "Her parents are away on a business trip. We can hide there for a couple of days." Emily nodded and packed the last of her things. Jacob looked at them curiously but fortunately remained quiet. "Ready?" Sophia asked. Emily took a deep breath and nodded. "Let's go." They quietly opened the door and peeked into the hallway. The nurses were busy with another patient. Not wanting to miss this opportunity, Sophia led the way, taking her mother and brother toward the emergency staircase. When they reached the first floor, they could see the back exit of the hospital. But at that moment, Jacob began to cry softly. "Shoo," Emily gently soothed the baby. "Just a little longer, please." Fortunately, Jacob calmed down quickly. Sophia checked their surroundings and, judging it was safe, nodded to her mother. "Let's go," she said. As the two exited through the back door, a taxi that Sophia had arranged the day before was waiting. Sophia told the driver the address, and the three got into the taxi. As the car started moving, Emily looked back at the hospital. Just a few hours ago, it had been a place where she dreamed of a happy new life beginning. Now it had transformed into a place of fear from which she had to escape. "It's going to be okay, Mom," Sophia held her mother's hand. "We have evidence. They can never hurt us again." Emily looked at her daughter, amazed by her strength. A mere 17-year-old girl, maintaining her composure in such a situation, trying to protect her family. She squeezed her daughter's hand back. "Thank you, Sophia," she said softly. "Without you." Sophia smiled. "We're family. A real family. Whether we're related by blood or not, families protect each other." The taxi passed through the streets of Boston, heading for the suburbs. An uncertain future stretched before them, but as Emily looked at her daughter and son, she harbored a new determination in her heart. To protect her children no matter what difficulties lay ahead. That had become her new mission. Kate Donovan's house was in a quiet residential area in the Boston suburbs. The two-story White House was surrounded by a large yard, providing a private environment. Emily's friend Kate was offering them a hiding place, taking advantage of her parents being away on a business trip. The documents taken from Richard's bag were spread out on a large table in the living room. Emily carefully read them one by one, trying to understand the full scope of the terrifying plan. Sophia sat next to her, while baby Jacob slept in a makeshift crib. "I can't believe it," Emily said in a trembling voice. "Richard and Jennifer, and even my parents." Sophia placed her hand on her mother's shoulder. "Mom, look at this document. It seems Richard and Jennifer's relationship has been going on since before you met him." Emily read the letter Sophia pointed out. It was a love confession from Richard to Jennifer, dated 7 years ago, shortly before Emily met Richard. "They were using me from the beginning," Emily said bitterly. "They were after my property." After her first husband's death, Emily had inherited a substantial insurance payout and real estate. She had wisely managed those assets to secure a future for herself and Sophia. Even after marrying Richard, she had kept her major assets in her own name. "Look at this plan," Sophia pointed to another document. "Richard had arranged for a doctor to diagnose you with postpartum depression. Then he planned to transfer asset management authority to himself on the grounds that you were mentally unstable." Emily trembled with fear. "That's why he was strongly encouraging me to take medication." Sophia nervously looked out the window. "They must have realized by now that we're gone from the hospital." As if to prove her words, Emily's cell phone rang. Richard's name was displayed on the screen. "Should I answer?" Emily asked. Sophia shook her head. "Not yet. Not until we decide on our next move." The phone switched to voicemail. Soon after, a notification sound for a message rang. "Emily, where are you? Everyone is worried. According to the hospital nurses, you, Jacob, and Sophia have disappeared. Contact me immediately. It's dangerous." Richard's voice was mixed with fake concern. "That liar," Sophia said angrily. Emily's phone began to ring again. This time it was from Jennifer. Emily ignored that call too. Next came a call from her parents. "Everyone's looking for me," Emily said. "What should we do?" Sophia said with a determined expression, "First, we need to store this evidence in a safe place. Then, let's contact a trustworthy lawyer." "But who can we consult?" Emily looked lost. "Richard knows every lawyer in town." After thinking for a moment, Sophia said, "My school counselor, Ms. Green, has a sister who's a lawyer. I think we can trust her." Emily nodded at her daughter's suggestion. Let's contact her. Sophia took out her own cell phone and sent a message to the counselor. After a while, a reply came saying that Ms. Green's sister, attorney Sarah Green, could meet them that afternoon. That's good, Sophia showed relief. She's apparently a family law specialist. At that moment, Kate entered the room. Sophia, look at the TV in the living room. You guys are on the news. The three hurried to the living room. On the local news channel, a headline read, "Newborn and Mother, Teenage Girl Missing from Hospital." The screen showed Richard speaking to reporters with a grief-stricken expression. My wife Emily is in a state of mental confusion after childbirth. It seems our daughter Sophia has also been affected. Their safety and that of the baby are our top priority. If anyone has information, please contact the police. Emily collapsed onto the sofa. He's trying to make me look insane. But we have evidence, Sophia said firmly. All of his plans are right here. In the afternoon, attorney Sarah Green visited Kate's house. She was a dignified woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a thoughtful expression. Emily and Sophia showed her all the documents and explained the situation. Sarah carefully examined the documents and took notes. This is extremely serious evidence, she finally said. Richard Collins could be charged with fraud, attempted misappropriation of property, and psychological abuse. But he's going around saying I'm mentally unstable, Emily said anxiously. Who will believe my word? These documents speak the truth, Sarah answered with confidence. Furthermore, we need to gather medical evidence about your mental state. Let's have you diagnosed by a psychiatrist I know. Sarah took out her cell phone and made several calls. As she talked, her expression gradually brightened. Good news, she said after hanging up. We can apply for an emergency protection order from the court. We can also petition to freeze Mr. Collins' assets. Additionally, we can counter his lies by anonymously providing information to a journalist friend of mine. Emily asked with an anxious expression, but what about my parents? They also. Sarah showed a sympathetic expression as she said, your parents may also face legal responsibility. However, the extent of their criminal liability will depend on the role they played in this incident. Sophia, holding Jacob, said, Are we safe? I think Richard is trying to find us. Sarah nodded. I understand your concern. I recommend moving to another safe location until tomorrow's court hearing. Please use the guest house at my office. That night, Emily, Sophia, and Jacob followed Sarah's suggestion and moved to a suburban guest house owned by her office. Sarah's assistant showed them around and provided necessary living essentials. Late at night, Sophia found her mother staring out the window. She quietly stood beside Emily. Mom, are you okay? Emily sighed deeply. How did it come to this? After your father died, I trusted Richard with all my heart. I thought he would become part of our family. Real family isn't about blood ties, Sophia said quietly. Family is people bound by trust and love. The three of us are family, Mom. That's enough. Emily wiped away her tears and hugged her daughter. You're so wise. I can hardly believe you're only 17. I had to be, Sophia answered simply. The next morning, Sarah arrived early at the guest house to prepare for the court hearing. She organized the evidence documents and reviewed the points for Emily's testimony. Richard, Jennifer, and your parents may also attend, Sarah warned. Don't let them upset you. I don't know if I can. Emily looked anxious. Sophia held her mother's hand and encouraged her, You'll be fine, Mom. I'm here with you. At 1 p.m., they arrived at the Boston family court. Reporters had gathered at the entrance. Sarah guided them through a back door, protecting their privacy. When they entered the courtroom, Richard was already seated with his lawyer. Jennifer was sitting nearby, looking tense. Emily's parents, William and Martha, were also present. They showed complex expressions when they saw Emily. Judge Elizabeth Morrison was a stern-looking woman in her 50s. She began the hearing, saying she would listen to both sides. Sarah first presented the evidence found in Richard's bag. The judge read the documents carefully, occasionally showing a severe expression. "How were these documents obtained?" the judge asked. Sophia stood up and explained how she had found the bag at the hospital. Her testimony was clear and logical. Richard's lawyer objected, "Those documents have been fabricated. Mrs. Collins is showing symptoms of postpartum depression, and her perception is distorted." Sarah immediately countered, "Mrs. Emily Collins was evaluated by 2 independent psychiatrists yesterday and diagnosed as mentally stable. I submit those diagnostic reports." Next, Sarah presented evidence of Richard and Jennifer's long-standing relationship, as well as bank records showing payments to Emily's parents. After reviewing the evidence, the judge turned a stern face toward Richard. "Mr. Collins, how do you explain this evidence?" Richard showed a flustered expression. "Your Honor, these are misunderstandings. I love my wife and children." However, his excuses lacked conviction. Jennifer shrank back, and Emily's parents began to throw accusations at each other. "You were the one who said Richard would take care of everything." Martha confronted William. "And you were the one who said Jennifer was smarter than Emily." William retorted. Their argument was stopped by the judge's gavel. Silence. The hearing continued for 3 hours, and finally, the judge ruled in Emily's favor. "After reviewing the evidence, I issue an emergency protection order for Mrs. Collins and her children. I also order the freezing of Richard Collins' assets and request a criminal investigation for fraud." Emily shed tears of relief. Sarah gently patted her shoulder and said, "This is just the beginning. But it's the first victory." As they left the courtroom, Emily's eyes met Richard's. His eyes reflected anger and a sense of defeat. Jennifer couldn't even look at her and kept her head down. Her parents watched her from a distance but didn't approach. "Mom, let's go," Sophia took her mother's arm. "A new life is beginning." Emily looked back one last time. Then she turned forward and began walking with Sophia and Jacob. 1 year later, a small cottage in the Boston suburbs was bathed in morning sunlight. The fresh green of trees swayed in the wind, and flowers blooming in the garden radiated gentle colors. The 2-story White House was filled with a warm atmosphere despite its modern look. Emily Collins stood in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Light streaming through the window illuminated her face, revealing a peaceful smile. At 36, she had overcome the hardships of the past year, becoming stronger and wiser. "Mom, is Jacob's bag ready?" Sophia came running down the stairs. Now 18, she was about to graduate from high school and had been accepted to Boston University. She had chosen to pursue medicine and was taking her first steps toward a certain future. "Yes, it's by the front door," Emily turned to answer. "I'll pick him up today, so you can stay and study at the library." In the living room, 1-year-old Jacob was playing in his walker. His smile was as bright as the sun, filling the entire room with warmth. Over the past year, Emily and her children's lives had changed dramatically. Richard had been charged with fraud and embezzlement and received a prison sentence. His company lost its reputation, and its stock price plummeted. Jennifer was also held legally responsible as an accomplice and lost her position in New York. Rumors said she had moved to the West Coast to begin a new life. Emily's parents initially showed anger and denial but gradually began to feel ashamed of their actions. They had tried several times to contact Emily, sending letters of apology. However, Emily wasn't ready to repair the relationship with them yet. She needed time. "Mom, how's the plan for the new group going?" Sophia asked, buttering her toast. Emily answered with a smile, "Very well. The community center director is fully supportive, and we officially start next month. Emily had established a group at the local community center to support single mothers. From her own experience, she had developed a strong desire to help mothers in difficult situations. "That's wonderful," Sophia said proudly. "Your story will help many people." Emily smiled gently. "That's my hope. Even painful experiences can have meaning if they help someone." After breakfast, Sophia left for school. Emily picked up Jacob and looked out the large living room window. Flowers she had planted months ago were beginning to bloom in the spring garden. They symbolized new life, new beginnings. The phone rang, and Emily picked up the receiver. It was attorney Sarah Green. "Good morning, Emily." "I have good news," Sarah's voice was cheerful. "Richard's last assets have been released by court order. Your and your children's future is now completely secure financially." Emily sighed with relief. "Thank you, Sarah. Without your help, I couldn't have made it this far." "It was all your strength," Sarah replied. "And one more thing. Your parents have contacted me again. They seem to be truly repentant." Emily was silent for a moment. "I understand. But I still need time." "Of course," Sarah showed understanding. "Whenever you're ready." After hanging up, Emily took Jacob out to the garden. Sitting on a bench, watching her son crawl around on the grass, she reflected on the past. Her first husband's death, meeting Richard, the remarriage she thought was happy, and then the shocking betrayal. She had painfully learned that life takes unpredictable paths. But the most important thing she had learned on this journey was the true meaning of family. Blood ties are merely chance. A true family consists of people who support and love each other without betrayal. Sophia and Jacob were the center of her life, and they alone were enough family for her. In the afternoon, Emily was letting Jacob play in the sandbox at a nearby park. She smiled as she watched him play. The small baby was already full of independence and curiosity. As she sat on the bench, other mothers she had met at the park approached her. They exchanged warm greetings and enjoyed conversations about child-rearing and local events. Emily was gradually finding her place in this new community. On the way home, she picked up Sophia from school. Her daughter said goodbye to her friends and got into the car with a smile. "How was your day?" Emily asked. "Fantastic," Sophia answered, her eyes shining. "I got the highest marks on my biology project." Emily looked at her daughter with pride. "Congratulations. You really worked hard." When they got home, the three began preparing dinner. Sophia played with Jacob while Emily cooked. Their laughter echoed throughout the house, making the dark days of the past seem like a distant memory. That night, after putting Jacob to bed, Emily and Sophia sat on the living room sofa. "Mom," Sophia said quietly. "Are you happy?" Emily looked into her daughter's eyes and smiled genuinely. "Very happy. Because I have you both. We're a real family, aren't we?" Sophia said. "Yes," Emily nodded. "No need for blood ties or marriage vows. All we need is love and trust." Outside the window, the starry sky stretched out. Like a promise for a new tomorrow, countless stars watched over them. Having overcome hardships, Emily, Sophia, and Jacob would continue walking their new path in life as a small but strong family of their own.